Juliana Vega rushed down the busy street holding her sketchbook tight against her chest. The wind tugged at her coat as she crossed the road, barely avoiding a black cab. She was late again. Her job interview at House of Allura, a luxury fashion store in central London, was in 10 minutes and she still had 3 blocks to go. Her phone buzzed in her bag, but she didn't stop. She couldn't afford to miss this chance. House of Allura was one of the top fashion brands in the city. If she got this internship, everything could change. Suddenly, her sketchbook slipped from her arms. Pages flew into the air like birds. Designs she had spent hours drawing floated to the pavement. "Oh no," she cried, bending down to grab them. A hand reached out before she could. Long fingers picked up her sketches carefully, one by one. She looked up and gasped. A tall man in a navy suit stood beside her, holding her drawings with a small smile. He had sharp cheekbones, deep green eyes, and short brown hair that looked like it had been styled by a professional. His black leather shoes shone in the sunlight. Everything about him said money and power. "These are beautiful," he said, handing her the pages. Juliana blinked. Thank you." "You're an artist?" he asked, glancing at a design of a long silk evening gown. "Fashion designer," she said quickly, tucking the papers back into her sketchbook. "Trying to be, at least." He smiled. "Well, you're off to a good start." Juliana felt her cheeks warm. She had no time for this, even if he looked like a movie star. She stood up and gave him a quick nod. "Thanks again. I really have to run." She turned and hurried off without looking back, clutching her sketchbook tightly. The man watched her go, his smile fading into thought. Then he stepped into the black car waiting by the curb. His driver opened the door without a word. As the car pulled into traffic, the man leaned back in his seat and looked down at one of Juliana's sketches still in his hand. He smiled. 2 weeks had passed since Juliana Vega's rushed meeting on the street with the stranger in the navy blue suit. She hadn't seen him again and she hadn't thought much about him either, or so she told herself. She had gotten the internship at House of Allura, and every day since had been long, exciting, and exhausting. She worked behind the scenes, steaming clothes, organizing fabrics, running errands. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. One Thursday afternoon, her boss, a sharp woman named Clara, approached her while she was adjusting a mannequin. "You're coming to the Black Diamond Gala tonight," Clara said. "Bring your best sketchbook. You might meet someone who matters." Juliana blinked. "Me?" "Yes. You. Don't look so surprised. You've got talent. I want our guests to see that." Then she walked off, leaving Juliana speechless. She had nothing to wear, no fancy dresses, no heels, no makeup that wasn't half dried out. She sat in the changing room panicking until Naomi, her roommate and best friend, burst in like a fairy godmother. "You're going to the Black Diamond Gala." "Girl, say less," Naomi said with a grin. She opened her big tote bag and pulled out a soft pink off-shoulder gown. "You'll look like magic in this." 3 hours later, Juliana stood in front of a mirror. The dress fit perfectly. Naomi had even done her makeup, subtle but glowing. She hardly recognized herself. At 8 p.m., she arrived at the Grand Hotel ballroom. Gold chandeliers hung above and everything sparkled. Men in black tuxedos and women in glittering gowns moved across the polished marble floor. A soft jazz band played in the corner. Waiters in white gloves served drinks on silver trays. Juliana's heart pounded. She clutched her sketchbook tightly. "Champagne, miss?" a server asked. She took a glass, sipped it, and tried to blend in. Then the room went quiet. A voice announced from the stage. "Please welcome our host and keynote speaker, Mr. Christopher Marcus." Juliana turned slowly. There he was, the same man from the street. Only now he wore a black tuxedo that fit like it was made just for him. He walked confidently to the stage, his face calm, his voice smooth. Thank you all for coming tonight. We celebrate innovation, creativity, and those who dare to imagine beyond limits. Juliana stood frozen. He's Christopher Marcus. She had heard the name before, the CEO of Marcus Innovations, one of the biggest tech companies in Europe. But she never imagined he was the same man who picked up her drawings in the street. He finished his speech. The crowd clapped. Music started again. Juliana turned to leave, but a familiar voice stopped her. I know you. She turned, and there he was, standing right in front of her holding a drink. You're the girl with the sketchbook, he said with a small smile. Juliana laughed nervously. You're Christopher Marcus. Guilty, he replied. And you're still carrying that sketchbook. Always, she said. Dance with me. She stared at him, unsure. One dance, he said softly. She gave him her hand. As the music played, he led her onto the dance floor. They moved slowly, gracefully. She was still nervous, but something about him made her feel calm. I liked your designs, he whispered. They stayed with me. Juliana looked up at him. You kept one, didn't you? He smiled. Maybe. She laughed. Outside, the night air was cool. They stood beneath the lights of the city, talking, smiling, forgetting the world for a little while. And when he leaned in and kissed her, it felt like a beginning she never expected. Juliana couldn't stop thinking about Christopher. The memory of their dance, the kiss, and the way his hands had held hers so gently stayed with her long after the Black Diamond Gala. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel something more than work, more than responsibility. She allowed herself to hope. But hope, she learned, was fragile. Days passed. A week. 2 weeks. And then, just like that, he disappeared. No calls. No texts. No messages. At first, she told herself he was busy. He was probably dealing with his high-powered business world. But when she couldn't reach him for a week, doubt crept in. She had always known better than to get her hopes up. Life had taught her that lesson well. On the third day of his silence, she decided to visit the Marcus Innovations headquarters. Maybe he had been caught up with work. But when she arrived, she was told he was out of the country. A business trip, the receptionist said. For how long? Juliana asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The receptionist looked at her, eyes shifting. I'm afraid I don't know, miss. Her stomach dropped. Something didn't feel right. This wasn't just a missed call or a busy schedule. Christopher was avoiding her. Her thoughts raced. Did I say something wrong? Did he change his mind? The next day she called him again, but this time his phone was off. The voicemail was cold and impersonal. The person you're trying to reach is unavailable. Frustrated and confused, Juliana sat on her bed that evening, staring at her phone. She had the sudden, sickening feeling that she had been nothing more than a passing distraction, an affair with an exciting stranger who had no intentions of staying in her life. And then there was the other part. The part that had been nagging at her since the first day they met. The part of her that couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to his sudden disappearance. She hadn't asked about his life, his world, his commitments. She hadn't pushed for any details. And now all she had was silence. Weeks passed. Juliana tried to move on, but she couldn't. She still carried the memories of their time together, the late-night talks, the stolen kisses, the way he had looked at her with a tenderness she hadn't known she deserved. She didn't know what happened, but she knew one thing. Christopher Marcus had changed her life. And now he was gone. It wasn't until one morning, nearly a month later, when her phone rang unexpectedly, that everything came crashing back. It was him. "Juliana," he said, his voice thick with regret. "I need to explain." She clenched her jaw, fighting the anger that welled up inside her. "Where have you been?" she demanded. "Why didn't you answer me?" "I couldn't," he admitted. "It wasn't safe. I had no choice." Juliana's heart raced. "What are you talking about?" "I'll explain everything," he promised. "Can we meet, please?" Her head swirled with emotions, anger, hurt, confusion, and somewhere beneath it all, a flicker of hope. It had been weeks since Juliana last saw Christopher. Her heart still ached from their conversation in the park where he had promised to explain everything. But life moved forward, as it always did. The triplets were growing quickly, and Juliana had enough on her plate. Raising them alone, running her fashion business, and keeping everything in balance left little room for lingering over old wounds. She focused on the laughter of her children as they played in the living room of their modest, cozy home in South London. Leia, Leo, and Liam were her whole world, and nothing could replace them. "Come on, Mommy, come play with us." Leia shouted from the floor, her eyes twinkling with excitement as she picked up her stuffed bear. Juliana smiled and sat down beside her, wrapping her arms around her children. "I'll play in just a minute, sweetie. I need to finish some work, then we can have a movie night." The doorbell rang. It was unusual for anyone to visit without notice. Juliana got up, hoping it wasn't a delivery she forgot about. When she opened the door, her breath caught. Standing on her doorstep was Christopher. He looked different. His suit was still sharp, but there was a tiredness in his eyes that wasn't there before. His posture was more relaxed, and he seemed less like the corporate titan she had met before and more like a man who had been humbled by life. "Juliana," he said softly. "I know it's been a long time, but I need to talk to you." She felt a knot in her stomach. The children were close by, playing in the background, unaware of the tension in the air. "I don't know what to say," she finally replied, her voice steady. "You left without a word, and I had to raise these three alone. You weren't there." "I know," he said, his voice thick with regret. "And I've spent every day regretting it. There's so much you don't know about why I had to leave. It wasn't just me being selfish. I was trying to protect you. Protect them." Juliana looked at him, trying to hold back the tears that were threatening to fall. "You hurt me, Christopher. I trusted you." "I never wanted to hurt you, Juliana," he said, stepping forward, his voice softer now. "Please, let me explain." For a moment, she hesitated. The pain, the betrayal, they were still there. But something about the way he looked at her, the way he seemed genuinely sorry, made her pause. Before she could say anything, Liam, the youngest, came running up to the door, his little hands gripping her pants. "Mommy, who's this?" Liam asked innocently, looking up at Christopher. Juliana's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't yet told the kids about their father. She had always promised herself she would, but this wasn't how she imagined it. She looked down at Liam and then back at Christopher. This is Daddy," she said quietly. Christopher's expression softened, and he knelt down to be eye level with Liam. "Hello, little man," he said gently. Liam looked at him, his big brown eyes curious, before he held out his hand. "Hi, Daddy. I like your suit." Juliana felt her heart swell with emotion as she watched the moment unfold. There was no denying it now, Christopher was here. He had come back. But the questions were still there. The unanswered ones. Could they move past the pain of the past? Could they build something new for the sake of their children? I'm sorry, Juliana, Christopher said again, his voice soft and full of sincerity. I know I've missed so much. But I want to be part of your lives. I want to be the father they deserve. The partner you deserve. Juliana swallowed hard. She didn't know what to say. What if this was just a moment of weakness? What if he left again? But then, as she looked at the children, so innocent and full of love, she realized something. Maybe they both deserved another chance. For the sake of their family. For the sake of her heart. I'll listen, she said finally. But it's going to take time. A lot of time. Christopher nodded. I'll wait. As long as it takes. And with that, the door opened wider, both literally and figuratively. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, there was hope. 3 months had passed since Christopher first appeared at Juliana's door. He had kept his word, visiting the children regularly, showing up with books, puzzles, and bedtime stories. At first, Juliana watched from a distance, cautious. But slowly, she let herself believe. He was sincere. Still, things weren't easy. She hadn't forgotten the pain of his silence, the fear of doing everything alone. But watching Liam crawl into his father's lap with trust or Leia show him her drawings softened her resolve. Juliana was focused on her next big step, London Fashion Week. House of Vega, her boutique, had been invited to collaborate on a fashion tech showcase sponsored by none other than Marcus Innovations. She considered pulling out. The idea of working directly under Christopher's company felt complicated. But this was her dream, and she wouldn't let her personal life get in the way of it again. On the morning of the strategy meeting, she wore her favorite emerald green pantsuit, tied her braids into a sleek bun, and walked into the conference room with her sketchbook in hand. She stopped cold. Christopher was at the head of the table. He looked just as shocked to see her. The other board members were too busy chatting and reviewing portfolios to notice the frozen air between them. She took a seat across from him, saying nothing. The meeting began. He didn't speak to her directly, only nodded when it was her turn to present her collection idea, sleek Afrofuturistic gowns with tech-embedded fabrics that changed color with body temperature. The room loved it. Applause followed. Afterward, as everyone filtered out, Christopher caught up to her by the hallway. Juliana, he said, I didn't know you were involved. You didn't ask, she replied, not breaking her stride. He followed. Can we talk? She turned, eyes sharp. About what? How you walked out again without saying you were the main sponsor. Or how I had to find out sitting across a glass boardroom table. I was trying to respect your space, he said gently. You've been building something incredible. I didn't want to make things worse. Juliana sighed. She was tired of being angry, but that didn't mean she wasn't still hurt. You keep saying you want to be part of this, but you keep making decisions without me. Christopher stepped closer. I made a mistake, Juliana. I didn't come back for control or to fix things overnight. I came back because I love you and I love our kids, and because I believe in you. Her eyes softened for a moment, but only for a moment. I'm not ready, she said quietly. Not yet. I'll wait, he replied. And as he turned to walk away, this time it wasn't cold or abrupt, it was patient. The kind of walk of someone who truly meant what he said. The weeks that followed Christopher's return were full of difficult decisions. Juliana had begun to see the subtle changes in him, a man who was no longer the detached CEO, but someone trying to make amends for the years he had missed. But despite their closeness, there were still too many unanswered questions. He showed up at her door every week, spending time with the children and helping around the house. It felt natural, almost too natural. Yet Juliana couldn't shake the nagging feeling that there was more to the story, more that he was hiding. One afternoon, as the children napped in the living room, Juliana sat at her desk, her sketchbook open in front of her. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. It was Christopher. "I know this might not be the right time, but can we talk?" he asked, stepping inside, his voice low and serious. Juliana closed her sketchbook, putting it aside. "Of course," she replied. She had been waiting for this moment, the moment when he would finally explain everything. Why he had disappeared. Why he had been so distant. Christopher took a deep breath before speaking, his eyes meeting hers with a mixture of sorrow and determination. "Juliana, there's something I've never told you. Something I should have told you before I left." She crossed her arms, her heart racing. "Go on." He sat down across from her, his hands clasped tightly together. "My family, they forced me to end things with you. They said that if I didn't, it would ruin everything I had worked for, the company, the legacy, even your safety. They threatened you, Juliana. They threatened the children." Juliana stared at him, shock running through her veins. "What do you mean? How could they?" "My mother, Juliana," he continued, his voice breaking, "she's the one who pushed me to stay away. She was afraid that if we stayed together, we'd both be destroyed by the power struggles within the company. She said that a family like ours, a man like me and a woman like you, would be a liability. That's why I left." She sat in stunned silence, trying to process his words. The weight of his confession seemed impossible to carry. So all this time, all this silence, it was because of them? Christopher nodded. "Yes. I was trapped between my family's expectations and my own feelings for you. I thought I could handle it, but I couldn't. I thought walking away would keep you safe. But now I see how wrong I was." The room felt heavier with each word. Juliana had always suspected there was something more to his departure, but hearing it from him was something she had never been prepared for. She shook her head, trying to absorb the magnitude of it all. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why didn't you trust me with the truth?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was afraid," he confessed, his voice tinged with regret. "Afraid that if you knew the truth, you would never forgive me. Afraid that I had already ruined everything." Juliana stared at him for a long moment. She could feel the tears welling in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. She had fought so long to protect her heart, and now everything she had been protecting was being tested. Finally, she spoke, her voice steady. "You hurt me, Christopher. You left me alone when I needed you the most. But hearing this, it makes sense. And I need time to process all of this." He reached out to her, but she pulled back, the distance between them still palpable. "I know. I'm asking for time, for your forgiveness, and for a chance to prove that I'm not the same man I was when I walked away." Juliana took a deep breath, staring at the man she had once loved, the man who had torn her world apart. She had a choice to make now, a choice about her future, a choice about whether she could ever trust him again. "I need to think," she said softly. "I can't promise you anything, but I'm willing to hear you out. Just give me time." Christopher nodded, his face filled with relief and sorrow. "I'll wait. As long as it takes." As he left her apartment that evening, Juliana was left standing alone with her thoughts. She had so many questions, so many emotions, and so many fears. But one thing was clear, the past wasn't going to be easy to heal. And yet, deep down, she couldn't deny the flicker of hope that still lingered. Christopher Marcus stood behind the podium at the Marcus Innovations Media Hall, facing a sea of reporters. Cameras flashed, microphones angled toward him, but for once, he wasn't thinking about optics or market shares. He was thinking about Juliana, and their 3 beautiful children. "Today," he began, clearing his throat, "I'm stepping down as acting chairman of Marcus Innovations." Gasps rippled through the audience. Whispers. Confused murmurs. He continued. For many years, I lived to protect a name, a company, a legacy. But in the process, I lost the most important things: time, love, and family. His eyes scanned the room, but he wasn't looking for the press. He was speaking to someone he hoped was watching. Someone who had given him a second chance. I'm choosing something else now. I'm choosing them. Back in her home, Juliana sat frozen on the couch watching the broadcast. Her heart pounded as Christopher's voice echoed from the screen. Leia leaned against her, watching too. Mommy, she said quietly. He's talking about us. Juliana nodded, speechless. Christopher finished his speech. No PR polish, no rehearsed answers, just truth. Later that evening, there was a knock on the door. When she opened it, there he stood, no suit, no driver, no entourage. Just Christopher. A simple gift in one hand, emotion in his eyes. I meant every word, he said. I don't want the company, the title, or the empire if I can't come home to you and them. Juliana stared at him, tears brimming. You gave all that up. He stepped closer. For something more valuable. The children came running to the door. Daddy, they shouted in unison. He crouched to greet them, wrapping all three in a hug. Juliana stood above them, hand over her heart. That night, for the first time, they had dinner together, all five of them. Laughter echoed through the home like music. It wasn't about being perfect, it was about being together. And when the kids were tucked into bed, Juliana and Christopher sat on the sofa, wrapped in silence, smiles, and understanding. The past couldn't be erased, but the future was now theirs to shape, together. Thanks for watching.